Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic. It's the Kitchen Table series and we are back with deck number 43, and in today's video feature we are going to take a look at a Naya Pandemonium deck. What's up, MTG Burgeoning community? Welcome back to the Kitchen Table series. Welcome back to deck tech number 43. We are up to number 43 as we charge closer and closer to the 50th deck tech of MTG Burgeoning's longest running series, the Kitchen Table series. And in today's video, folks, we are going to take a look at a really fun to play Naya Pandemonium deck. So let's get right down to the tech-in. As generally is customary here during the Kitchen Table series, we begin with the installation of the land base. And since we're playing Naya, we're playing three colors. We're playing white, we're playing green, we're playing red. We have 4 basic plains, we have 4 basic forests, and we have 4 basic mountains. And to help round out the mana base, we are going to include a playset of Rootbound Crag, which is our Gruul check land. Gives us a red or gives us a green, 4 copies of those. And a full playset of Sunpetal Grove, which is going to be our Selesnya check land. Gives us a green or gives us a white, 4 copies, 20 lands, 1 dozen basics, and 8 check lands, and then of course the customary, the obligatory, the #1 card at the kitchen table, our Soul Ring. So that's our 20 lands and our 1 wonderful artifact, and that's going to comprise our mana base. So let's now shift to a little bit of protection, because in order to get Pandemonium out there, in order to get our win conditions in place, we got to make sure we can protect ourselves and keep the battlefield clear of our opponents trying to thwart our game-ending plans. So let's begin with playing 2 copies of Lightning Bolts. 1 red, 3 damage, any target. Gotta play with Lightning Bolt. You gotta love that card. A little more serious damage that can happen. Well, not damage, I should say, maybe a little more serious line of protection. Let's include a playset of Swords to Plowshares. 1 white to exile a creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power, but if we get our Pandemonium out there, it's not going to matter. 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares. So now let's transition to talking about exactly what Pandemonium is, because it is not a very well-known enchantment as it debuted back during the time of Exodus. And that, my friends, was back in 1998. So let's read what Pandemonium does. It is an enchantment for 3 and a red that says whenever any creature, and then we have to be careful with that, because there is the possibility of having a Pandemonium in play and then dying to it because of our opponents. Whenever any creature comes into play, that creature's controller may choose to have it deal damage to its power to target creature or player. So that's any target. So even if we have a Pandemonium in play, our opponent is going to be able to cast and put a creature into play and have that power, or the power of that creature, dealt to any target. So we do have to be careful. There is the propensity of this backfiring on us, and it does happen. But we're playing red. Red is our win condition. That's what happens when you roll with red, baby. 4 copies of Pandemonium. And just as a side note, Exodus here, the very first Magic set that featured colored rarity symbols. And it was the 3rd and final set of the Tempest block, which is, sentimental to me because I began my Magic playing career when Tempest came out. All right, so we're going to include a copy of Strionic Resonator as a way in which to double up on our Pandemonium triggers. It's an artifact that costs 2 to cast and 2 to activate, and when we do, and we turn it sideways, we copy target triggered ability we control and may choose new targets for the copy. So with Pandemonium sitting out on the battlefield, as well as a Strionic Resonator, we get a creature into play, we tap 2, tap the Strionic Resonator, and we can duplicate the Pandemonium trigger and send that damage to any target. So the next set of cards that we're going to talk about, we're going to show a play set of a card that's going to help us abuse the ETB triggers of our creatures so that we can maximize the amount of damage we dole out with our Pandemonium enchantment. And that's going to be all the way back to the time of Avacyn Restored. We're going to play with one full play set of Cloud Shift. It's an instant, it costs 1 white, and we exile target creature we control and then return it to the battlefield. That's it. It's a quick blink. It's going to help with combat tricks. It's going to help with, like I said, abusing the ETB triggers of Pandemonium. 4 copies of Cloud Shift. All right, next we're going to transition to our creatures. Now, because Pandemonium is an enchantment with a mana value of 4, we're going to want to try to untap with that or cast that while still having some mana on our side so that we can take full advantage of what that enchantment is going to do. So these first few creatures that we're going to talk about are going to be mana value pretty cheap, but boy, they come in with some pretty big effects. So let's begin with the full playset of Green Belt Rampager. It costs 1 green for a 3/4, and when it ETBs, we pay 2 energy. If we can't, we return Green Belt Rampager to its owner's hand, and we get an energy. So let's say we are able to cast our Pandemonium. We untap. We've got a couple of forests in play. We cast the Green Belt Rampager. It ETBs. The Pandemonium triggers. We deal 3 to anything. We can't pay the energy, the 2 energy, so we return the Rampager to our hands. We tap green again, put it into play again triggering the Pandemonium. We get the second energy, so now we're going to have to pay it. No, actually, we don't have to do that yet because we return it to our hand because we only get the energy after we return it to our hand. So before Green Belt Rampager sticks on the battlefield, we can cast it 3 times and deal 3 lightning bolts wherever we want because of the presence of Pandemonium. 4 copies of Green Belt Rampager. Another creature kind of similar to what the Rampager does, but in a much more frenetic way, we are going to play with 4 copies of Vexing Devil. It costs just a red for a 4/3, and when it ETBs, any opponent may have it deal 4 damage to them, and if a player does, we must sacrifice Vexing Devil. So there is the possibility for this to come into play, trigger Pandemonium, deal 4 to something, and then have an opponent take 4 damage in order to send Vexing Devil to the graveyard. That's 8 damage for 1 red mana as long as we have Pandemonium on the battlefield and under our control. That is great Magic math. 4 copies of Vexing Devil. All right, next up, we are going to play with a full play set of Primal Force Mage. It's an Elf Shaman for 2 and a green and has a 2/2 body. And whenever another creature comes into play under our control, that creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So imagine this scenario. You're sitting down, you're participating in the game. Turn 3, you cast your Primal Force Mage. Turn 4, you cast your Pandemonium. You untap with your Pandemonium, and in your hand you have maybe a Green Belt Rampager and or a Vexing Devil, or multiple copies of each. You cast the Rampager or you cast the Devil. They come into play. They get the buff. And then Pandemonium is going to deal 6 or 7 damage to any target. 4 copies of Primal Force Mage. And the next creature has a mana value of 3, but man, is it packing the stats at power and toughness. It's a vanilla creature, but for a red, a green, and a white, we're talking about a 5/4 for an investment of 3. Yeah, it's one of each color, but it's a 5/4. We will include this every day of the week. 4 copies of Woolly Thoktar. All right, and we are just about done. We're down to our last 8 cards, and we have 1 more set of creatures, and then our ultimate win condition. So let's let's showcase our last creature. It's a mana value of 4, 2 and 2 red. It's Ogre Battle Driver. It's a 3/3 Ogre Warrior, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, that creature gets +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. And this is included not just for the +2/+0 buffer, which is something similar to what Primal Force Mage gives, but the haste is also important, because if for some reason our opponents are overly packing enchantment removal, or they have creatures that could just really, really deal too much damage to us upon entering the battlefield and triggering Pandemonium, then Ogre Battle Driver kind of gives us an additional win condition, because we can get these creatures into play with mana values not commensurate to what their power toughness are, give them +2 as a boost, and also the haste will allow them to attack the turn they come into play. So in a way, Ogre Battle Driver will help to enhance the Pandemonium trigger, but it also provides us with an alternate win condition. 4 copies of the Battle Driver. And last, cards 57 through 60, we are going to include a set of enchantments called Sapling Burst. 4 and a green, it has Fading 7. So we remove a fade counter at the beginning of our upkeep, and when the last one is removed, we must sacrifice Sapling Burst. However, we may remove a fade counter from Sapling Burst at any time and put a green sapling creature token into play. It has this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of fade counters on Sapling Burst. When Sapling Burst leaves play, destroy all tokens put into play with Sapling Burst. They can't be regenerated. So the ultimate win condition in this deck falls right onto curve. The 4 CMC of Pandemonium comes down, then the 5 CMC of Sapling Burst follows. It comes in with a fading counter, with 7 fading counters. We remove 1 fading counter for a 6/6. It triggers the Pandemonium, deals 6 damage to a player. We remove another one, it then deals 5 damage. We remove another one, and then it deals 4 damage. By the time we're done removing the fading counters from Sapling Burst, we will deal 21 points of direct damage by investing 4 and a green into this enchantment, as long as Pandemonium is on battlefield. And that's it, folks. That is the ultimate win condition. This will take down an opponent as long as that opponent has 21 or less life. 4 copies of Sapling Burst. MTG Burgeoning Community, there you have it. Deck number 43. This is Naya Pandemonium. This is the Kitchen Table Series. And this is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.